I am NetMoverSitan. Now for Dante's notes, and after that, I'll get to work on Chapter 8. Between Chapter 7 and Chapter 8, Dante had learned about the distant past that the Blood Fiends witnessed within what is now District 16, which affected the present as Sancho's family were preying on humans. Then he gained insight on Limbus Company HQ from its Encephalin department, led by Honenheim, who shows that since the first kindred Don Quixote was killed, their Don Quixote couldn't remove Rocinante without being consumed by an insanity-inducing amount of blood first. Then they arrived at District 8, where they were heading towards Honglu's home. But before they could deal with his unfinished business, they dealt with a plot from a rival claimant to the family hierarch seat, an attempted assassination via the Haishu Pack. The Mao branch, to be more precise. Another attempt on their lives by Big Brother Ricardo of the Middle, and the Knight in the Backstreets, yet they somehow survived. Jia Sichun was there during this, and she saw it as prudent to ally with Limbus Company, and Dante saw no reason to refuse her. Here are the updates to the notes so far. The districts. Apparently, associations in different cardinal regions, west, east, south, and north, each have different uniforms and association fixers working in the same region as their headquarters are seen as stronger or higher ranking than others. Sometimes transfer between regions happens as a form of, promotion. I can see that as the case. If Sunk HQ is in the west and Lu Association is in the east, which was hinted at by Lu Association South Section 3 Yisang. The syndicates known as the Fingers, however, their outfits don't vary by region, although they sometimes wear variations of the same outfits. But that's more to do when they don't have a strict uniform code. With the middle, as long as they wear purple and white, that's all that matters in the end. The Thumb, on the other hand, being sticklers to protocol, are more likely to have a strict uniform code, along with the Index for those that haven't had their bodies replaced with prosthetics like Index Proxy Gloria. Now let's move on to the Limbus Company section, starting with Refraction Railway Line 5. Dante described this as a railway of purple lights, labelled Line 5, much like the last railway. Chains of battles continued through consecutive stations. They even faced off against more Peccatorem Invade, the Envy Peccatorem, the demonic dittos. Some were even reflecting relatively new identities, wondering how this was working. They went on to describe it as beginning with two sections that met in the middle, converging into one, finding it annoying to be locked out of identities that they had already used in the second section. Between each section was an odd thing that empowered the damned dozen. They had to choose carefully when they selected, as it didn't just affect them, it affected their enemies as well. Something else to add, what was used in Section 1 couldn't be used in Section 2, but once they got to Section 3, anything goes. There was mostly bleed in this one. As for what to choose, I chose whatever I thought was best for each section and altered my setup, if and when it turned out to not work out so much. Then there's the LCE, Limbus Company in Kevlin, the Research and Energy Generation Department under Chief Researcher Honenheim. They conducted various studies and research, specifically with the abnormality, distortions, and even peccatula. They're isolated and studied. The interiors are similar to Lobotomy Corporation. The employees all wore EGO gears extracted from the abnormalities, which is different from the Lobotomy Corporation versions, as they exhibit more of each of the source's idiosyncrasies. Sorry. English is failing me again. You get the idea. Dante knew that from the identities, that's not a good thing, as corrosion was easier due to this, seeing the technology as having some room to grow. I can understand that. I mean, imagine if they captured the magical girls and made EGO gears from them. They'd be taken over by the power of anime come to life in less than a week. Or worse, if they had white knights. While not as apocalyptic as the abnormality itself, it's still pretty dangerous. I mean, the mischievousness of the Fey Lantern is probably the least of their problems. Now we move on to the nests, starting with H-Core, or Hongyuan Bioengineering Group, located in District 8, which is all stuffed into one big... Actually, big is a disservice to the sheer magnitude of the megastructure that comprises the entirety of District 8, which is called Hongyuan. Their singularity is the creation of the bolus, a type of medicine. Dante had been told that they don't just heal wounds, but also allow for body modification procedures. The way that it changes the body creeps them out. Those that take them or use them in procedures would gain body parts of specific creatures or have parts of their own bodies replaced by them. In District 8, depending on the amount of your net worth, the size of the room allocated to you would either grow or shrink. The buildings themselves shift around to reflect that, seeing that it's space there that is used to measure one's worth. Considering that in District 20, time is used to measure that. How the bolus works, it at least explains how some in the high shoe pack have the feet of a hare or a rabbit, or in the case of the identities that appear in Chapter 8, having limbs that can turn into whips, which also gave Gregor his arm back. As for the space of where you live, which is clearly at a premium in District 8, for those barely sustaining themselves, at worst, I'm thinking Japanese capsule hotel room, where the more wealthy, like Hong Lu's family, have a large pagoda with grounds. The Haishu packs are a private army for various forces in Hongguan, the Mao branch being one of those that they encountered. There are others, each with different animal characteristics. Zhao Sichun told Dante that they wield the power of the 12 animals in a list called the 12 Earthly Branches, something with ritualistic meaning. Dante asked if their allegiance can be traded, as the Haishu identities revealed that they often change masters or their lords. Dante saw similarities between them and Arcor. They had similar animal themes. Although the Haishu packs are likely based on the Chinese zodiac. There are 12 animals in that, and the rabbit was one of them. Although they likely needed to call themselves hares to not attract trouble from Arcor. Yeah, I know. Legal thing. M Corp is located in District 13. Dante noted that they seem to have a singularity called moonlight stones, which allows people to focus on a singular subject or eliminates all distracting thoughts. He also remembered, they also remembered the Abyss Trauma Correctional Facility, where Catherine wanted to send Hindley to deal with his alcohol, gambling, and other mental illnesses. Yes, his alcoholism. Suspecting that they specialize in psychological healthcare or relaxational businesses, Dante considered that they buy those moonlight stones for the damned dozen to prevent corrosions or to help them calm down and relax when their turn comes up with their unfinished business. When bringing this idea up towards this with Faust, she denied this request and didn't explain why. Apparently it wasn't the time to discuss it yet. Dante understood that every technology had different sides to them. Suspecting the side effects. Considering that it requires specialized tools and noise-cancelling headphones to extract them from their transportation crates safely, as they come from a fleshy growth that makes a trauma-inducing noise. This was shown in Leviathan. I can understand why Faust would be hesitant to expose them to this. Either that or she sees them as needing this trauma. At least for now. Then we have P-Corps. This wing's motto has something to do with creating a very safe home. Their singularity either expands or warps space. Structures made by this are all very elastic, which was literal, as when Manchaland began to manifest again after its sealing 200 years before, the buildings touching it bent outward like rubber. It was said that it was completely safe inside, even if the exterior bent and twisted. Dante couldn't imagine how this could be true, although Dante was aware of there being many space expansion technologies in existence that allows things to be bigger on the inside. But P-Corps focuses on safety. Dante suspects that Manchaland heavily influenced P-Corps' singularity, asking if the singularity could be inspired by something else. The shelter from the 27th of March used to be a P-Corps shelter, but it became an abnormality, likely due to the strong emotions and trauma of the smoke war. Much as Carmen created Bloodbath after she committed suicide due to a combination of the Seed of Light project not achieving the results expected, due to numerous deaths in the experiments, Enoch, one of the children that was taken in from the outskirts, being one of them, which was what caused her to snap. As for singularities being inspired by something else, I can think of a few possibilities. Let's hope someone isn't inspired by Super Sentai, as a singularity involving that would involve ridiculous outfits, pointless explosions, and giant mechs summoned by stupid poses. Now, X-Corp, located in District 24, regardless of whether they'll go there or not, Dante remembers that the Indigo Elder's skiff was made by X-Corp alloys. Also, Mr. Earnshaw failed to get a tool made from that for Catherine, around the time when he brought Heathcliff into their home. Dante also remembered that the identities mentioned that excavation can unearth all kinds of stuff like microwaves or car tires, asking if they uncovered those finished products and immediately put them to use. Asking how that's possible. Perhaps they repurposed the materials, like they did with that skiff. Regardless, monsters from the outside, or possibly made as a byproduct of X-Corp's singularity, appear periodically to threaten those that extract what was there. So, Zwei Association are sometimes contracted to deal with this, when others like M Corp's Order of the Lunar Visage or X Corp's Alloy Guardians, likely the main corporate force in that district, or even the Advanced Excavation Fellowship. The civilian protection. The downside of this singularity is the periodic monster attacks. Well, regardless of what is causing this, whether it be due to making them or attracting them from outside the city. Let's move on to the fixers, specifically Sunk Association. When declaring duels, the eastern branch of the Sunk Association, instead of doing so by tossing their glove, they do so by announcing their affiliation and name. The biggest difference has to be their dress code and weaponry. Unlike the pretty iconic blue capes and large hats worn by the western fixers, and also those in the south, the eastern branch of the Sunk Association wears a deft-looking outfit that blends in better with the general outfits of the eastern region, which is traditional Chinese, at least in the parts that they've been to. And unlike the other Sunk Association fixer identities that they've met so far, the Eastern Sunk Association identities, they primarily use hand-to-hand combat as the primary means of fighting. They wear bracelets or bangle called virescent pyrojade on their wrist. They use this to melt whatever the user touches by applying high heat. The green flame of these apparently has the power to burn only what the user wants them to. Dante sees that as singularity tier tech. Makes you wonder what the northern branch is like, considering that the eastern branch is where everybody is kung fu fighting. I doubt it's singularity tier tech, as it's just one that's exclusive to that branch of the Sunk Association. It's much like the Polynista courier trunks are exclusive to the Devious Association. Now let's talk about the syndicates. Dante understood that there are 5 particularly significant syndicates of the backstreets. The Fingers. It's been said that they're so powerful and influential that not even the wings and the associations can easily pick a fight with them. Rodia and Heathcliff told them that people in the backstreets have to learn and abide by their rules if they want to survive. Weirdly enough, Ryuji seems to know a lot about them. They were warned about her background when they first boarded the bus, suspecting that it might have something to do with that. In her Zayn EGO image, through the window with the bars, it was a representation of the Fingers, making me suspect that she off all 5. I mean, if Ricardo knew about her, it wouldn't have made a lot of difference anyway, as she was seen as an accessory to Heathcliff's actions. I still think that she signed up for fun, specifically the kind of activity that would be seen as fun for a Blood Knight, like her. Not the more harmless kind of fun that Honglu signed up for. The Ring are one of the 5 Fingers. They value art and knowledge. They appear many times in discussions regarding the corridor. They've not met anyone with current affiliation with the Ring. Those working with Asia were apparently exiles. They used to be part of it, and they liked art. The extremely gruesome kind are what the Ring likes, from what Dante could gather from the identities and what Ryushu told them. Their art often consists of sculptures stitched together from amputated body parts, paintings made of blood, The kind of art that the Cenobites from the Hellraiser movies would appreciate. They're divided into various factions, such as pointillists or falvists, divided along the lines of artistic philosophy. Insanity and art are seen as occupational hazards. The Ring are no exception to this. Also, when they're mentioned in conversations involving the corridor, that's likely because they had control over a corridor at one point, which allowed them to move from District 22 to District 14, which was what led to Virgilius's office being wiped out, and also resulted in the chain of events that led him to be the guide for Dante and the Damned Dozen. The Ring will likely trigger some PTSD flashbacks in him, if and when they appear. Now, the Middle, they prioritize loyalty. They were first encountered on the Great Lake within District 21's territory. They refer to each other with sibling terms like big brother, big sister, little brother, and so on. Familial bonds. They carry books of vengeance on them, where they write down their grudges and go after anyone who has the misfortune of getting written up on it. Dante asked how long will Big Brother Ricardo follow them, worrying that he might one day barge into Mephistopheles. Then they also remembered Rodia suffering from her encounter with the Middle, asking if their grudge with Rodia has been resolved. They saw it as a sensitive subject, so it's not something to bring up yet. Now, the questions that they wanted to ask her were growing. I suspect that the grudge that she started has been dealt with, as she's already, besides, she's already marked for death due to being seen as an accessory to Heathcliff's actions. I'll be honest, if they found themselves in hell due to the remnants of a wing that tapped into it once, he'd follow them there. As for the back streets, there's the night in the back streets. Starting at 3:13 a.m., the sweepers emerged for 80 minutes to clean up the back streets of the city. Starting from the borders of each nest, they simultaneously emerged from the ground, marching through the back streets and sweeping everything in their path away. Their march consists of 3 waves, with about 10 minutes of reprieve in between. Dante doubted that they would have survived if they didn't have that. Apparently many things were banned during this time, such as recording of video and audio, breaking into or destroying someone's home, and Faust told Dante that the head wields the sweepers. Dante can't imagine how they cooperate with each other, asking if it has something to do with the taboos. Well, the sweepers are a mix of a terror weapon and population control, although I doubt it's needed for the last part, as there's enough death without that. Although they do get rid of any evidence to a crime if left outside. As for the video and audio being banned during this time, that's likely to prevent anything that the head might not want anyone to analyze. Now, to put it into perspective, NCorp has the taboo against any video being recorded in District 14. Yes, any video footage at any time is forbidden to be recorded, although audio doesn't appear to be a problem outside of the night in the backstreets. The head either communicates in the sweeper language, or the sweepers likely have some kind of conditioning that allows the head to control them, or provide a failsafe to prevent them from turning against the head. Dante should be thankful that they don't know that they captured children alive to turn into more sweepers. Now the sweepers, Dante is unsure if they're people. They appear in the night of the back streets. When aboard the bus, they move past them. They were unrelenting and numerous when outside it. As they sweep the back streets, they melt down anything that needs to be cleansed, such as dead bodies in the back streets, unauthorized constructions. Dante saw it as somewhat necessary, but they also melt down any unfortunates enough to be caught outside during this time. They even melt down their own and heal from that, which made things more difficult for them. They hoped that the sweepers wouldn't be fought again. There's also something that they didn't know, that they also have family groups and they speak in a language that few can understand. One of which is an illegal AI in the library called Angela, who is currently in the outskirts and has been there for at least 2 years now. Now for the uncategorized, as in something that doesn't fit any specific category. Blood fiends. Dante knew that they were neither abnormalities nor monsters. They're closest to distortions, but that's tenuous at best. Moses, the LCD's team leader, said that they're fundamentally different beings. Dante saw that they all have red eyes, but there's no way to distinguish them as red is used in ocular combat augmentations, like what Virgilius, the Red Gaze, uses. That recognition method would also be useless if they replaced their entire head with a prosthetic, like Dante did. They have strong regenerative capabilities, but they're hard to kill if they've consumed enough blood. Crushing their heads can kill them, as blood fiend or human, once that's gone, it's all over. The warp train's environmental uniqueness, which was due to T-Corp tech siphoning time, made that not an option. He could tell that the head was a core element of making regeneration work. If the head wasn't intact, then H-Corp life insurance wouldn't work, nor would K-Corp ampules. Dante also saw that they have an overpowering desire for blood. The blood fiends that of the Manchaland try to consume hemobars with artificial or animal blood as a substitute, but only flowing blood can sate their hunger. They can overcome it if this urge is forgotten, but it's not easy to find Lethe, the River of Oblivion in the outskirts. Not a place to travel to lightly. Asking how Bari, Knight of the White Moon, found it. They also have strong feelings to propagate the family. Yes, propagating the family. Sancho was an anomaly that she didn't create kindreds of her own. Once embraced as part of the family, they care about and treat each other as such. Rocinante hides Don Quixote's more obvious blood fiend features and at least partially suppresses her bloodthirst, allowing her to pass for human. They don't know how it works, or if it has anything to do with the body of First Kindred Don Quixote that P-Corp has in its possession. Sadly, Rocinante can't fully suppress this. She's been enduring this through sheer willpower. What's so different between their Don Quixote and the First Kindred? What gives them such resilience against bloodthirst compared to others? Limbus Company HQ has been sending Don Quixote a steady supply of high-quality blood packs. When Dante asked why couldn't they do the same at Manchaland, Faust replied that it was simply an issue of demand vastly outweighing the supply. Too many blood fiends to feed compared to the amount of blood that they could draw from willing visitors. Which was why they developed hemobars to meet the demand with as little blood as possible. Dante didn't believe that it would work anyway, even if there was enough blood packs. I suspect that a few, possibly more than 26 people, had met the abnormality Nosferatu, which was likely one of the more natural abnormalities in existence, and through him, they became the first blood fiends, the first kindreds. They were numerous enough to fight in a war against the humans, which they lost, partly due to the Manchaland blood fiends siding with the humans. This was more than 200 years ago, which was a time when fixers were focused on honor and selflessness, rather than greed and self-interest, as they are in the present. The blood fiends are immortal, but are plagued by a bloodthirst that threatens to drive them insane if they don't satisfy it, and they're also plagued by something that an immortal would be threatened with more: boredom. If you're incapable of dying of old age, how do you spend all that time? I had suspected that blood banks would be a viable business for both getting blood and passing themselves off as human to the humans, but since only flowing blood would do, this wasn't viable. Hotel Larriere was more viable, as it allows them to get a non-lethal amount of blood from the guests, while also not turning them into blood bags in the process. A much more viable business model. I wouldn't be surprised if there were a few blood fiends that hired their services as assassins. Well, if they're going to kill their target anyway, they can afford to drain them dry while doing so, and none of their clients will complain about that. As long as the target is dead, that's all that matters. Finally, there's something to add about abnormalities, which is an umbrella term in this case. The risk levels, where they learned about the new classification codes and risk levels, which until now they weren't sure whether wa or he was more dangerous, and one of them was weirdly powerful for a TEF level. Now that they have the expected damage scale, as well as energy production levels, he 5 being more potently dangerous than a wa 4 in battle. Although Hohenheim dismissed this as a singular numerical scale of power, but it makes sense to have that alongside the risk levels system developed by Lobotomy Corporation. Yes, Lobotomy Corporation. Dante was concerned that they'll encounter Zayn 10 threats. Now, distortions. Dante saw that each distortion has unique powers, something like singularities, if not superior to them. T-Corp Chief Executive Director Hubert could see that as a new possibility through the distortion known as the Time Ripper, asking about the true potential, something to do with the Time Ripper's ability to extract time and put the victim in a state of temporal stasis and out of phase of the rest of space-time. And then we have the Stage 3 Pacatula. These were first encountered at Wuthering Heights, past Stage 2. The LCE categorized them as Class 1, 2, and 3, while it seems that Stage 1, 2, and 3. While it seems that Stage 3 is the final stage, Hohenheim wasn't so sure, seeing Pacatula as mediocre shells. Dante asked what distinguishes their stages. Well, for a start, each stage shows them getting bigger and more dangerous. Well, looks like it'll be time for Chapter 8 lore next. Until next time. Hail the rabbit!